Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here. I know a few folks are still joining in, but we're right past 12 p.m. Eastern, so I wanted to get started. Really thrilled to welcome all of you. It's December 2nd, and the holiday season is well underway. I know for those of you who are students at the law school, this is a really busy time for you, so thank you for taking some time out as you prepare for finals to come and hear from Charlie Corwin. And I'm really excited that you're going to get to hear from him today. But before we go into our event, just want to quickly just tell you a little bit about who we are for those of you who are new to the Venture Fund, and then talk about our event today. And then I'll hand it over to Eli Silverman in just a minute here. So just really quickly, so everybody is aware, the NYU Law Venture Fund is housed within the law school to create a community to support students and alumni who are interested in entrepreneurship, either in-house as a lawyer or on the business side as a VC or as an investor. And to accomplish that goal, we host a number of events where you get to hear from our community members who are doing those very things. And we also host a number of student and alumni programs. I'll quickly highlight one of those programs for you because we've got a deadline coming up, in fact, early in the new year. We run a summer internship program for 1L students in the first summer after their first year. Eli, in fact, was one of our recipients this past year, so that's a fun coincidence. There are more details on the slide here. You can also reach out to me if you're curious, but would strongly encourage those of you who are curious about startups to get involved and to participate and apply for one of these opportunities. So that deadline is coming up again early in the new year, and then you'll hear back from one of the two hosts of those opportunities by the end of January. So with that, we're really, really excited to welcome Charlie Corwin to speak today virtually via Zoom to our community. I'm not going to introduce Charlie because Eli is going to do that, but I just want to say we're happy to be partnering with the NYU Law and Business Association for this event. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eli, who will introduce Charlie and our topic for today. Eli, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anthony. And just wanted to say that I strongly encourage whoever might be interested to apply and to look and learn more about the companies for the Venture Fund Summer Opportunity. I think it's a really, really awesome experience. And, hello, everyone, and happy almost final season. Thank you for coming out to what I expect to be a really enjoyable and rewarding meeting, covering innovation, entrepreneurship, life after law school. And today we will be joined by Charlie Corwin, who, apart from sharing one and soon, hopefully, two alma maters with me, both attending University of Wisconsin undergrad and NYU Law class of '99 alumni. He's an entrepreneur. There you go. Go Badgers. He's an entrepreneur, lawyer, now co-CEO of SK Global, a leading brand in the entertainment industry, really focused on creating authentic content that has a worldwide reach, which is made possible by understanding local markets and interests both here and overseas. Charlie, in his short 20-year career, has touched everything from record-breaking films like Crazy Rich Asians to subculture-specific TV shows from Miami Ink to Comic Book Men and Storm Chasers, with productions being nominated for Academy Awards, Golden Globes, Emmys, Spirit Awards, and without further ado, Charlie Corwin, welcome back to NYU Law.
Thank you. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for that warm and kind introduction, and good afternoon to everybody. I can't see you all. There might be a way to do it, but I'm not on my normal gear here. I'm coming to you from Miami Beach during Art Basel, where I'm staying in a house that used to be lived in by Johnny Versace. So that's why it looks like a Biggie video. In case you're wondering, if I showed you the rest of the room, you'd be like, what? Anyway, so I've been asked to talk to you, I guess, by Anthony and Eli about being an innovator. And while I certainly haven't invented any like rocket ships or new vacuum cleaners or anything like that, I have tried to have new ideas and methods of dealing with the to respond to a constantly changing media industry, and the shifting rules that govern it, and the laws that govern it. And if I were really, which I think I am being asked to try to crystallize my career into a soundbite, which, by the way, is a good kind of exercise to do every once in a while, I find. I would say I'm an entrepreneur in media. I try to predict where the paradigm shifts in the industry will be, and I try to build companies at that spot, at scale, and to try to do it first. So I think you'll see that as I take you through some of the things that I've done in my career. And I think you'll see other certain themes emerge too. And please think as I talk about any questions you have. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of years, a lot of experience trying to cram into a short period of time. So I'll do my best. It kind of started with my first company, which was which I started when I first graduated from college, with some friends of mine that I had grown up with, which was a hip hop record label called Rawkus Records. That was a time when, in the mid 90s, in rap music and hip hop, it was a really interesting and entrepreneurial time. That's when Puffy started Bad Boy and Death Row and Andre Harrell, and there were a lot of other really interesting things going on. And so Rawkus, our thing was like about this kind of socially conscious hip hop we called the hippie hop back in the day, and we signed people like Mos Def and Talib Kweli and things like that. So I would say my first company was a critical and commercial success. We ended up selling that company, but it was a personal disaster for me, because I started it with my best friends that I grew up with, and we had a terrible falling out. And I left, probably a year into it, and I went to NYU Law School. And NYU Law School for me really was a place for me to regroup and rebuild myself. And that I've come to realize is a really important part of my process and my career. It happens, careers are cyclical rather. And sometimes after a failure, sometimes after a success, we're just starting something new. You need to take a beat and kind of take stock. And what I call do this sort of 100 cups of coffee thing, which is like, just have a cup of coffee with 100 different interesting people and hear what they have to say, read a lot of books, absorb a lot of information. And out of that process, I've learned to kind of trust myself that a new idea will emerge. And I will start talking about it until I have it really tight. And then I go out into the world and I try to put it together by raising money and finding partners and doing all the other things that I do. So that's what law school was to me. It was a really incredibly important time of me understanding the world, understanding the landscape, understanding myself, meeting really intelligent and smart people. And that gave rise to, me sort of healing myself in that experience at Rawkus and coming back with my next company, which I started my first year out of law school. I actually was a summer intern at an entertainment firm in New York, got offered a position there. While I was procrastinating studying for the bar exam, I wrote a business plan for what we used to call an internet company. It's called Live Music Channel. And I sent it out on a lark to venture capital. And then I somehow passed the bar and went to the law firm. And on my third day there, I got a letter from this VC firm in New York saying, we want to fund your plan. And so I quit that day. So I was a lawyer for 3 days. And then I became a 26-year-old CEO of an internet startup. And that company, in a soundbite, was a rocket ship that ended up crashing and burning. But it was a time where, well, first of all, what the company did was it was a time where everyone was talking about convergence. You're going to have as many channels as you have URLs, and every URL can be a channel. We were going to be a live music channel, streaming single song live music clips that we licensed and we shot ourselves. And we raised a lot of money. And I had like one of these big loft offices on Soho with hundreds of people in it. And I was worth a tremendous amount of money on paper, none of which I got to spend, by the way. And then a couple things happened. Number one, the bubble burst on the .com market in 2000. And number two, Napster came out, which made music free. Also, I was a tech streaming, I was a streaming video company back in the in the late 90s when we had 56K dial-up modems. So there was just a tremendous amount of buffering. It was basically an unmitigated disaster. And very quickly, I was in that loft office by myself in Soho with no employees, on the phone with creditors trying to settle for pennies on the dollar. It was an incredibly humbling experience. And I was like, wow, I'm going to be this big thing. And then, oh shit, it's happening again. And, I went through another one of those cycles, and out of the sort of ashes of Live Music Channel, I started my next company, which was a production company called Original Media. And like that were always sort of my two loves, was music and film, and like trying to find the connection between them. But out of something that really felt like scorched earth, I was able to grow something new and something that really worked, and that was Original Media. And I hit the new paradigm shift at the perfect moment. The hip hop thing I got to a little bit late, but I made it, but I didn't, it didn't work out for me. The internet thing I got to a little bit too late. The bubble burst before I could go public, and a little bit too early in that I was a streaming video company when the tech couldn't support it. So timing is so important in these things. But the Original Media, I hit reality TV at the perfect time. And I really had like sort of like I had $1.5 million left in the company, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to spend it on a movie. And I knew this guy Noah Baumbach, and he's a director and writer, and he had this movie called The Squid and the Whale that he couldn't get made. And I said, can you make it for 1.5 million? He's like, I don't know, but let's try. And we did. And that movie ended up getting nominated for an Oscar and Golden Globes and all this stuff, and was really very successful. And I made another couple movies, and they were very successful and got nominated for awards. And all of a sudden I was a movie producer. But I wasn't making any money, and you don't really make any money on independent film. But that was the idea. I got to independent film a little bit late because, the peak of it was, when Harvey Weinstein was running Miramax and Disney bought them for a huge amount of money. I got there a little bit late for that, but the right time for reality television. And I thought, as I was in Sundance with all my movie friends, I was thinking, I really need to do something that makes money. And so reality TV was at the beginning. And I just started making sort of what we call docu-soaps, documentary series about subcultures and people that I knew. I made one. I used to be a skater growing up in New York City, and so my first show was called Skate Naps, about Zoo York, which is a skateboard company that my friend owned, and that was on Fox. And then I did this one about my tattoo artist. That was called Miami Ink, and so on and so forth. Storm Chasers, Rachel Zoe Project, all these other like subculture reality television shows, and that really worked. And then one day my agent called me up and said, hey, do you want to sell your company? And I was like, somebody wants to buy my company? And they did, and there were multiple offers, and I ended up selling it to this big company called Endemol, which is the biggest kind of reality television company in the world. It's a global independent studio. And they bought my company, and I did a typical deal, which is what we call an earnout, where they bought 51% of my company, but there was a formula for determining what the other 49% would be worth. And I had to run the company for 5 years, and during that time, I determined the purchase price for the last 49% of the company, depending on how successful my numbers were. And I did. At the end, I was going to go do something else. Now it was time for me to do something new. And then they asked me if I would then become the CEO of Endemol, which was interesting. That was a really, well, I won't give you the personal story behind it, but so I did. I became the CEO of Endemol, and that was really me moving from being a producer to being a corporate CEO. And now I was running a multi-billion-dollar company, and that was great in some ways. It was also a whole new set of challenges and frustrations. Endemol was a company that was famous for reality television formats. The way they started their company, I'm only telling you this part because it's relevant, is we're doing on time. Okay, is because it started like 20 years ago by these two Dutch guys, Jan de Mol and you came up with, they kept what's called the format rights to that show. So even though the network paid for the show in Holland, they own the format rights. And then they would go to each country around the world. They'd say like, oh, hey, France, what's your best independent production company? Okay, here's 50 million euro. Now you're Endemol France. Go make Big Brother in French and sell it to TF1 or Canal Plus. And they did that around the world until they had a 48 country decentralized global empire. And they ran many other formats. We did American Idol, we did Master Chef, we did Deal or No Deal, we did this Extreme Home Makeover, we did Wipeout, we did so many reality TV formats. And they were all kind of run through our companies. And the reason I bring that up is that structure of a decentralized company. We were buying entrepreneurs in different territories, feeding them and supporting them with IP and with capital, but not running them in the day-to-day top-down monolithic structure like Disney, for instance, or Apple. That is the model that I still have today, and I'm employing in my company. It's a contemporized version of that same model that I learned when I was in Endemol. But Endemol was doing these reality television shows that were sort of long in the tooth, and streaming platforms were starting to displace linear television. And I thought, we got to pivot this company. And so I said, we're going to buy all the management companies in Hollywood. That was my plan. And the management companies represented the biggest writers and directors. And so I figured, well, they're settling for too skinny a slice of the pie. They're representing these writers and directors and setting up shows. And then they're taking credits and they're taking little back end fees in the budget and stuff. But if I could sit a management company representing all of this talent next to a giant fund of money to deficit finance, development, and production, well, then I could corner the market on content. And I needed to shift to big premium scripted television because that's where it was. So I had some success in doing that. We did some shows like Black Mirror and The Bridge and Peaky Blinders and some other really cool shows. But at the end of the day, my board shot down my acquisition strategy. And that was the beginning of me like having people more powerful than myself or boards of directors or whatever, just sort of say, listen, I'm not going to do the thing you want to do. And my response to that was just to leave. And so I said, okay, I quit. And I did my little, thing again. And then I went and I became the CEO of Imagine Entertainment. Imagine Entertainment is a company that's been run for 30, 40 years by Brian Grazer and Ron Howard. And they've won multiple Academy Awards. They're a legendary production company. And it was really the kind of content I wanted to make. And I felt like it was the best brand possible. And of course, I came in with a plan. We raised a lot of money and we were going to take a very Hollywood-based brand made for movies and television, and we were going to turn it into a global brand. Because what I saw is the next paradigm shift, after reality television and after hip hop music and after the internet and streaming, was toward the globalization of audiences. And so I thought we can take this brand global. And at the time, China was investing in Hollywood in a big way. And I spent a lot of my time in Imagine raising money in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong. And we did. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to make local language programming in emerging markets. And while my board really liked the idea, when it came down to it, Imagine's a Hollywood company. And ultimately, my partners, the way I used to say it to them jokingly was, you're not really interested in going anywhere that the golf cart on the back lot can't get you to. And so I left there too, because I just couldn't do my global strategy. And then I teamed up with my current partner, John Panati, and we have this company, SK Global. And the idea of this company was really, I'm glad I'm getting to this now so that we can kind of go a little bit slower. I wanted to race my way through the history and get to the present. But please, if there are any questions, save them up and ask me at the end. There was this idea that I really had when I went to Imagine and that I learned at Endemol, that Hollywood is no longer the only epicenter of creativity in the world. And now with this paradigm shift toward global audiences, because we have global channels, right? You're getting a chance to platform those storytellers in places in the world where they didn't have platforms before, and give them budgets that they never had before. And I saw that as pure opportunity. And so what I'm building at SK Global is a global, of course, decentralized like Endemol, independent in that we're platform agnostic. We're not owned by a major. We don't have any first looks or overalls anywhere. We're not exclusive to anyone. So global, decentralized, independent content studio with a brand for telling culturally specific stories, but dialed for global audiences, and with a focus on emerging markets. Let me unpack all of that for you for a second. Give you by giving you an example. Crazy Rich Asians is sort of the example of that, right? It's a culturally specific story. It's a story about Chinese immigrants in Singapore. It's a story about very rich people, but it is a Singaporean story and a Chinese story. But it's also a global story. It's a story about trying to maintain culture and tradition across a generational diaspora, which every culture has that story. And it's a romantic comedy, and it's a Cinderella story, which is obviously a very well proven trope that all audiences love. And so while we told a culturally specific story, it appealed to a global audience, and it focused on Asia as an emerging market. Part of the reason that I want to focus on emerging markets is because there's been this shift in the economic underpinnings of our business, of the entertainment business. And this is where the laws is also really important. Laws are changing, right? So we used to make money in entertainment by selling tickets, by selling windows, by selling territories, by selling commercials. Those are kind of the 4 ways that we made money in the entertainment business. All of that is kind of going away and being replaced by this one global metric for growth, for $1 trillion, global integrated, entertainment conglomerates, which is new subscriber acquisition. How do you get a new subscriber to sign up for your platform and give you $9 a month or $6 a month if you're Netflix or Disney or whatever? And so seeing that happening, I thought, okay, well, you have to, if you're trying to grow valuation for a global streaming platform, you really, and valuation growth is through new subscriber acquisition, you have to focus on the places in the world where that proposition is the biggest, is the most exponential. And that is emerging markets, very simply because they have the combination of the most compelling population demographics. There's just simply the most people there. And I'm talking about 1.6 billion Chinese, 1 billion Southeast Asians, 1.3 billion Indians, 1.2 billion Sub-Saharan Africans, 1 billion global Latinos. These are giant populations of people. And it's a combination of these big population demographics combined with a very light saturation in terms of the number of those people who've already made up their mind whether they want Netflix or Amazon or Apple or Disney. And so that's the opportunity for the most growth. So how do you get those people? And we're platform agnostic. So our simple hypothesis: you tell stories, really premium Hollywood level stories at Hollywood level budgets, that the people in those cultures and those countries can see themselves reflected in. The way we would say it is of, by, and for. So we don't only want to tell a Indonesian story. We want to tell it with an Indonesian writer, an Indonesian director, and from an Indonesian point of view and perspective. And now you're seeing, this was not my show, but with the incredible sort of meteoric success of things like Squid Game or Money Heist or things like that, this kind of content really is catching on. And so that's what we started to do. We started to tell these stories around the world and know that they would become the subject of bidding wars between global streaming platforms looking to add new subscribers in the places in the world where that proposition is the biggest. And we would be the surrogate, our shows and movies would be the surrogate marketing campaign for that new subscribers marketing campaign for global streamers. Like, you don't see a Netflix commercial, you see a commercial for Squid Game. And so we would be those things. Right now we're shooting a show I just came back from Bangkok where we're shooting a series for Netflix called Thai Cave Rescue about, I don't know if you remember the true story of the 10-year-olds soccer team in Thailand that got stuck in a cave and the whole world trying to figure out how to get them out. We're telling the scripted version of that story. We are doing, we have a series in India that's a true crime series that called Delhi Crime, which won the International Emmy and Academy Awards last year. And we have many others. We have 3 movies in Mexico, 2 a show in Africa that's starting, and a movie in South Africa, and shows and movies around the world. So hopefully, I mean, you could see from me describing my career a little bit that the themes are, again, everybody, you have to pick your sector. For me, I was always passionate about entertainment, media, movies, television, and music. And so I figured out how to be an entrepreneur in that. The way I did it was to try to predict, understand as much as I could about the industry and about consumer behavior, and try to figure out where those industries were going and what laws were going to govern them and what economic models would result from that playing field. And then try to, triangulate that spot like a GPS system and build a house on that spot in the form of a company, and build it first and build it at scale. And that's a constantly shifting, changing GPS spot. And so, I've been successful at it sometimes, not successful at it others. And in the midst of those changes, I've gone personally through these cycles where, something works or it doesn't, and I have to reinvent myself again, because the world is constantly being reinvented. And I think that's just the life of an innovator or an entrepreneur.
Awesome,
so that's
Charlie.
it. I did not stop much.
No, thank you. Thank you. We're going to open up for Q&A just in a few minutes here. And so just to remind everybody, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens, or if you're using another device, I'm sure you all know how to use Zoom at this point. So please do that. Eli will kick that off with a question. But Charlie, I was just really curious if you could touch on this a bit before we move into Q&A. You obviously came into law school with a set of business experiences and skill sets, right? You had started a company prior to coming to law school. How did the legal education you received, and I know you only practiced for 3 days, but how did what you learned at law school help you as you went on both in music and then onto the entertainment and live media and all of the mediums of that? How did that legal background help you in those roles?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it is like, a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of answer. I think that we all bring a unique set of experiences to everything that we do every day, and every experience that we have is a part of what we are and what we bring to the table. Earlier on in my career, I talked about being a lawyer. That's what I brought to the table more than most other things, even though I wasn't an experienced lawyer, because that was my experience. As my experience got broader, it became one of the things. How it affects me and how it's helped me over the years, there are countless ways. I mean, now I have many, well, not many, but yeah, many. I have many lawyers, like many, and I love talking. We're conversant, like we speak the same language. We do the same deals. We just do them from different entry points. So that's one way. Another way is that, like I said, law school is whatever you want to make it, right? I mean, it's 3 years of being surrounded. I mean, at NYU anyway, it's 3 years of being surrounded by some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. People far smarter than me in many ways that I met there. Students and professors. And it's an opportunity to just, absorb, be a sponge, and really learn. And you can take away from that anything you want. I think learning is not passive. I think it's interactive. And I think the way that you experience the info available to you in law school depends on what you want to use it for. And that's really just your own personal decision. But it is, to me, I'm giving it some thought in preparation for this over coffee this morning by myself. I would say that for me, the most important part of law school was a period of self-reflection and a period of learning that really informed. It's a 3-year, I was about to say respite, but I'm sure it doesn't feel like a respite to you guys. It's a lot of work, right? I mean, I can remember how much work it was, but it's a luxury to be able to just learn and ask questions. And that's what law school was for me.
Thank you, Charlie. Eli, I'll hand it over to you so we can get Q&A started.
Yeah. So I thought all of what you mentioned was really interesting. I just had a question about the decentralized model you were talking about for, I think you mentioned Endemol, and then now that you sort of have the same model. I'm just curious in terms of, your starting point, whether you decide on an emerging geographic market, or you're handed a script or pitched an idea and then you go there, or if you're connected first with like a local production company, and then you sort of build around them. And then, once you have that starting point, how do you acquire the rest?
That's a really good question. I think the way that I do it typically now is, so you want to think about formats that are franchisable. So like, Big Brother was an example of that. Now, like we're trying to do it now with Crazy Rich Asians. So we are developing Crazy Rich Mexicans and Crazy Rich Indians as the next iterations of our franchise. Because like I said, it's a rags to riches story, a story about maintaining cultural identity across a generational diaspora. Every culture and country has that. Emerging markets have it even more as they come from the third world into the first world at 100 miles an hour. And so, it's a format is something where everybody can understand the story and relate to the story, because what's human about it is more than what's specific or unique about it, but that it also presents in a unique way. An Indian wedding looks very different than a Chinese or Singaporean wedding or Mexican wedding. So you want it to be different and you want it to be the same. And then once you have that, you look for really talented producers, because really talented independent producers usually don't have access to capital and they don't have access to intellectual property. So they're like profitable companies that are doing, physical production, but they're becoming work for hire. They don't own anything. They don't have the capital to invest in things and, and retain the rights commensurate with that risk capital. And so what I do is, once I have some formats, I go to the places in the world where I think growth is, and I buy production. I'm in the process of buying a Southeast Asian production company, an Indian production company, a Mexican production company, an African production company. And once I own those, my plan is to drive these formats like Crazy Rich and others through those places and have them produced by local, which will, raise the value of those companies. I buy those companies at a multiple of EBITDA. And for those of you who know what EBITDA is, essentially means net profits. It stands for earnings before income, depreciation, taxation, and amortization. It just means net profits. And companies are usually valued as a multiple of that net profit. So I'm buying them at like a 6-7 times EBITDA multiple. My own company is trading at a 20 times multiple. So they're accretive for me. So I buy those companies at a low value compared to my own. I trade them at a much higher value, and then I blow them up by feeding them IP and giving them capital, letting them own more of their own things.
I'll throw you another quick question. Were you ever considering going to a law firm after NYU for the long term, or was it always sort of the idea being a stepping stone until the next big thing?
All right. I mean, look, of course, I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't really know. I can't say that I had a specific plan and had executed it. That wouldn't be true. I think a lot of my career has been driven by feeling like I had things to prove. me leaving the record label early on, I always had this kind of, this unfinished business feeling. Like I had to prove to myself that I could do it again. And so I think that was always something that I wanted to do. But I love music, and when I was growing up, all the CEOs of all the great record labels all came up through the business affairs departments. And it was something that I'd always realized, like every great, whether it was Warner, Elektra, Atlantic, or whether it was Universal or Sony, all the heads whose careers I admired had all come through business affairs, had all come through legal. So that was the extent of my thinking.
Charlie, there's a lot of like pattern recognition that I think you've done over your career, and I think maybe you downplay this a bit, like a lot of ways in which you've been incredibly creative and innovative, but the way you perhaps share it with us is like, oh yeah, I just figured it out. So I'm going to like double down on that a little bit and ask you maybe to just share with us a bit, given our theme of innovation today, of like what framework you use, or maybe just to make it a bit more personal, right? For a law school student who's watching this with us live, or who may watch this on YouTube later, like how can they start to, what frameworks would you suggest that they use while they're at a firm or in-house in legal, or maybe moving to the business side as a junior level person on a team, to start to be that innovative person, to then grow into eventually getting to a leadership position and hopefully someday in a position similar to yours, right? Like how can they start thinking and looking at problems differently, and how can they stand apart from their companies? Because you've clearly done that repeatedly, like you've done that over and over and over again. And, at certain points you've indicated, right? Like, hey, it was time to leave and try to do something different, which is also a huge risk in each of those moments. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, look, I would just say if I made it sound like it was easy, that was not intentional, because it's never been easy. It's been really hard, sometimes extremely rewarding, and other times soul crushing and heartbreaking, and I also don't mean to sound overly melodramatic, but it certainly feels dramatic when, you're inside your own body experiencing what you're experiencing. I'm a person that puts a lot of pressure on myself, and I don't know how else to do it. It's just my way, right? Like I try really hard. I'm a passionate person. I'm not, I'm not like Dr. Spock, like I can't be, it's just not the way I am. I wish I were more stoic. I would be a lot less stressed if I were more stoic, but I'm not. I throw myself into things. And so I think the first thing is, the reason I throw myself into things is because I'm incredibly curious. And to me, I would attribute most of my career to just a curiosity that I have to understand things that I haven't yet learned. And, you find teachers, that's what you do. You meet people, you listen to them, you find people. And for me, I'm just sort of a thief, where I steal a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person. And out of that, I make something new and something my own. And then I run with it, and I road test it, and I workshop it until it feels tight. And then I raise money. That's my process.
Awesome. Charlie, for those who are thinking about pivoting from the law to business, I know you did that in 3 days. That's usually not the traditional path. What advice would you have for students and our young alums who are still practicing law? They have an interest to eventually sort of go do something different. How would you advise them in making that transition and taking that risk?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question that you asked, because I graduated from NYU in '99, so it's been a while. So I don't know like what it is now, but it certainly felt at the time, and I don't think this was particularly at NYU. I think it felt like this at every law school, that law schools created lawyers to work in law firms. Like it was like, that was the assembly line. And the idea that you could do something different with this education was unusual, to say the least. And I hope that's changed. And if it hasn't, I hope I can be a small part of changing it, because it's a fantastic education for whatever you want to do. And I think what some of it is practical, right? Law school is incredibly expensive, and you get out of law school and you feel like, well, I can make a lot of money as a lawyer, and I have to make a lot of money because maybe I have a lot of loans or whatever, but I have to deal with this. Like, I spent a lot of money on this education so that I can make a lot of money doing this thing. And so now I can't just not do that thing, right? And I would just say, have faith in yourself. If you want to do something else, that you can make that work and that you can make that pay dividends. And ultimately, you have a long career, you might get paid a little bit less in the first few years starting your own thing or doing something other than going to a law firm than you would if you went to a law firm. But in the long term, you may make way more. And more importantly, you'll be more fulfilled if that's the path that you want. There's obviously nothing wrong with going to a law firm. Some of my best friends are lawyers at law firms, and they're very happy people, and they have fantastic careers. And like I said, we work together as partners. We have slightly different jobs, but we work together on the same deals as partners. So there's a lot of diversity within the field as a lawyer, but also don't feel like you're prohibited from doing something else. You have a great education. What got you to NYU Law School, what will get you a degree, are the same qualities that will make you successful in whatever field you want to be in.
I can ask one more, speaking on the sort of transition from a legal to more business oriented career. It sounds like you were more the case where you sort of started working in business and created your own job after law school. Whereas I know a lot of people will go to a firm and then maybe in-house and then try to transfer while in-house to a more business role kind of gradually. I wonder if you're familiar with more people who have done sort of a similar move to you or the alternative, and what you think is maybe more typical and more difficult.
Yeah, I don't know what I think that in a big company, if you're going to go to, like, I always started companies, so, but if you're working in a big company, I think you go from being this is one path. You go from being a lawyer in a law firm to being an in-house legal at a company. And a lot of companies, certainly in the entertainment business, there's a difference between a legal department and a business affairs department, although the business affairs department are mostly lawyers. But it's more about deal making than it is about litigation or other aspects of law. It's really more in business affairs. There's a bunch of lawyers that are focused on making deals as opposed to focusing on insurance, litigation, other legal things that companies have to worry about. So it's going from a firm to going from a legal department to going to a business affairs department, and then from going from business affairs to the C-suite, as they call it, or whatever, is a path that I've seen a lot of people do. So it wasn't my path, but it can be a path.
Cool, Charlie, this has been really, really informative. We just want to wrap by asking you about advice you'd like to give to students. And maybe I want to ask it to you in this way, like thinking back to maybe when you were in law school, what is some advice that you would have loved to have heard at the time and you didn't? And so in that vein, what would you like to share with the group today?
I mean, listen, I'm being honest. What I would have liked to have heard was, don't panic, like, just, you're really in if you've made it this far, you're in a very elite group of people that are hardworking, driven, smart. You're going to be successful. Life's going to be good. Don't worry about the student loans. It'll all work out.
You may have to say that like 10 other times, Charlie, but no, thank you. Charlie, thank you. We know you're incredibly busy. I'm sure busy with a lot of stuff, not just at Art Basel, but you, as you mentioned, we're just in Thailand, working on that show. We can't all wait to watch it. On behalf of the group, I first just want to say thank you because you worked on probably so much content that we have enjoyed, both on TV and in all the mediums, reality and otherwise. So thank you for entertaining us and working on some great content. But more importantly, thank you for just taking the time to share from your lessons, from your insights, and just share wisdom with us today. We're really, really grateful. A big thanks to all of you for attending as well. Again, I know it's a really busy and crazy time for students as you all prep for finals. So wishing you all the best. And remember what Charlie said, don't panic. Enjoy this time. And also best wishes to everybody for a safe and healthy holiday season. And with that, we'll be back come the new semester and the new year for more events like this, as well as some additional student programs as well. So just want to remind everybody, if you're interested in the Venture Fund Summer Internship, those application deadlines are coming up in early January. So thanks again, everybody. Have a safe afternoon, and talk to you all soon. Take care.